Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Psalm 150 Talk Show. My name is John, aka The Blind Fury, and you can find me at www.theblindfury.com. Now, if you want a chance to be on this show, all you have to do is go to my website, click on the Psalm 150 Talk Show, pick out the artist that you want to talk to, and then join us on the date and time appointed. That's all there is to it. If you have any questions, drop us an email at psalm150@theblindfury.com. Thank you for joining us and enjoy the show. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Psalm 150 Talk Show. This is John, your host, aka The Blind Fury, and you can check out my website at www.theblindfury.com. And on my screen is a very special guest tonight, Jason Romero. You can find him at www.jasonromero.net. And Jason is also visually impaired, legally blind, like myself. So you've got two blind guys tonight. It doesn't get any cooler than that. Welcome in, Jason.
Hey, thanks for having me, John. I appreciate it, man. It's going to be a fun Sunday night with you.
It's going to be great. I can tell right now. We're just going to have some fun and chat. So tell everybody about your vision, how much you have, and what led into the visual impairment.
My vision's perfect. My eyesight's a little messed up.
I love that.
My eyesight, I have this thing called retinitis pigmentosa. I'm 51 now. I was 14 when I was diagnosed. And what retinitis pigmentosa is characterized by is usually it presents in people differently, but generally speaking, retinitis pigmentosa presents in a loss of your peripheral field as your retina deteriorates, and it closes down into like a tunnel and straws and pinholes. And then sometimes people have no light perception. Severe night blindness is another characteristic symptom of it. And it depends person by person. Acuity may differ. My acuity is pretty off. It's like, it depends on the day. It could be 2200 to 2400 through my tunnel. And I have about a 15-degree tunnel right now, which I liken to if you had two toilet paper carton rolls like inside and you put them right next to each other. That's kind of like the tube that I see through. So I kind of like peer around. And I operate like on contrast, works really good for me. I do have some light sensitivity, but that's the gig.
Yeah. Well, that's similar to mine. So I definitely understand that. And I loved what you said about the vision thing. My book is actually called Stop Your Whining, Legally Blind with 20/20 Vision. So I also grasped what you said right there. That was awesome. So thanks for the segue and to let me punch my book in there.
Well, I want a signed copy.
I never even asked you to do that. That worked out perfectly. This show is over. So now, Jason, my book, it talks about mindset and, basically how you respond is a lot more important than what actually happens. And so I'm assuming that when your vision started to deteriorate, all you did was just sat around and whined about it, right?
The good thing was I was 14 when I was diagnosed. I ignored it 100%. And I just went on with my life. I just adapted. What was good was I knew I was different because I didn't understand why other people's behavior was different. Like I played football, night games. I couldn't see the ball. I didn't understand other people were like able to see that stuff. But when I realized I had this, visual condition, it made sense. So that was really good. I basically was in denial for it for probably 3 decades of my life, 30 years until I was 44 years old.
Wow.
And then what happened was it deteriorated to the point where I voluntarily stopped driving. I was able to drive. I could never pass the vision test, the eyesight test, but with a doctor's note, they would let me, they would take that for passing the test, but I always had to do a driving test to prove that I could actually drive. And I could drive safely, but at age 44, I just about ran down a family of 4. Ooh. And I didn't know if that was them or if it could have been my shrinking tunnel. Mm-hmm. And I obviously erred on the side of being conservative and I stopped driving immediately. And that was really devastating to me, triggered a severe depression. I was divorced, had 3 kids, and I didn't understand. I used public transportation. It was just, it was a lot to go through. Yeah.
So out of high school, how did you do then? I know the answer. I just want people to hear your story.
Through out of high school, what happened? So when I was going through high school, I couldn't read. Like I could read maybe like for 5 or 10 minutes a book, but then my eyes would strain and I couldn't see the words on the page. And a lot of times like in English class or something like that, the teacher would say, okay, everybody, we're going to read for 30 minutes. And I'd start, my books, start reading, and, the lighting's not really good. And, the schools where I was going to, and after like, a few minutes, I couldn't see what was on the page, but I looked around and everybody else was like flipping through the pages, like reading. And I pretended like I was reading. Like I didn't say, hey, I can't see. I just like flipped the pages. I was faking like I was trying to, imitate what everybody else was doing. I figured they were faking too. And what ended up happening going through high school was I didn't really learn when I was in class. I couldn't take notes, couldn't see the chalkboard, couldn't read the stuff. I could hear what was going on, but I wasn't taking in everything that was taking place. Like in math class, they do the proofs of the theorems on the chalkboard, and I couldn't understand. So what ended up happening was after school and everything was done, I came back to my house and my mom had me set up where I had like 4 lamps on my desk for like super bright environment. I had a big magnifying glass. I think it was like 5 times 5x. And I had these little +2 reading glasses. So I think I had +7 magnification. And I sat there with my book, and with that, I just taught myself all my subjects out of my book. So I like self-taught myself high school, and then I went to college. I did the exact same thing in college because I couldn't see anything. And then I went to law school, and that was really challenging because there's a lot of reading in law school. Like generally speaking, between 100 to 200 pages of reading per night, plus you're outlining. And that was, my eyes definitely got worse in law school, but everybody's eyes get worse in law school. But I was able to get through it, with that adaptations. I was just glad I was going through that when I was in a younger stage, because like now there's no way with my acuity that I could, pretend to do that. I have to do something else. I have to use some type of technological adaptation, adapt differently.
Well, if it means anything to you, when I was in English class and they told us to read, I also faked it, but I did have vision. I just hated to read. I just faked it. I did it. I had no desire to read all of that stuff. I was like, what in the world? I'm just going to take a nap and nobody's going to know it. I'm just going to fake it.
Yeah, sitting back. Yeah, lean down and grab the book, cover up your face. Like, huh? What?
Yep. So you went to law school, became an attorney.
Yep.
Right. And then you ended up working for GE.
Yep. After I was a lawyer for probably like 6 years. And part of that time I was out in private practice, meaning I was defending companies, doing corporate law. I was defending companies when they got sued. They could have gotten sued for anything, for like, a mining company pollutes, it turns into a Superfund site. They're putting arsenic and cyanide and stuff like that in the ground because they're mining out.
Spilled hot coffee in your lap.
Yeah. Could be anything. Could be Walmart because the toilet paper falls on a customer or whatever. But I was defending the man, and it wasn't my groove. Like there's different types of law that I think, more suitable to me, but with where I was at right there, that type of law just really wasn't. And I didn't enjoy, I was litigating, which is a fight. I did not enjoy fighting. I was getting paid to fight. I'm not a fighter, man. And being in conflict all the time, some people can do it. Some people don't mind it. To me, it's just, it's a drain. It's not, I'm about building things together and, creating peace. I'm not about tearing things apart and, creating conflict. And so anyway, I wasn't happy, and I was getting ready to have my first child. And my father left when I was 2, and I pretty much was raised by my mom without a dad. I had always wished I had dad, that father figure type of thing. And I always committed to myself that if I had kids, I would be a great dad. And that was really my signal, having my first child, Sierra. And before she was born, I just went on this massive, I was like, I got to get out of this law thing. And I'd wanted to go into business. That's what my undergrad degree was in. And I found the GE had a headquartered business in Colorado, went and, knocked on their door till I got a job, and they gave me a chance. I was a lawyer there for like 6 months. And then the next 9.5 years, I switched into business roles and did operations, marketing, risk, financial services. And ultimately I achieve my goal, which is to be a general manager of a business there. And I ran GE Capital in the Caribbean, lived in Puerto Rico for 6 years, and that was a good groove. It was a good gig.
So I was right. You did sit around and whine and do nothing because of the
pretty
vision.
much.
Yeah,
pretty much.
yeah. So
and there's another piece of the story too that I want to add in, because it's actually it's an important piece for the story and how it unfolds. Because when I was 14 and I was diagnosed with this thing, I was in a retina specialist office. A retinist eventually diagnosed retinitis pigmentosa because it's a retinal eye disease. It took a few specialists to get to the retinist. Mm-hmm. But when I did go there, I was 14, so I was in 1984. And this guy tells me, he flips through all these tests. He's like, you're going blind. And me and my mom are sitting there like, what? We're not even prepared. I'm like, what are you talking? I'm supposed to get glasses. Like, what are you saying? I'm going blind. Like, what? And then he says, well, what do you want to do with your life? And my mom didn't go to college. My dad didn't go to college. My mom was raising us, and she told me and my brother, we will go to college. We will get graduate degrees. And I just, she brainwashed me. She's like, you're going to be, a professional. And I told this guy, I was like, I'm going to be a doctor or a lawyer. And he said, forget about it. You will see nothing by the time you're 30. It's like roughly another 15 years. Most blind people don't work. Learn to do something with your hands. And so that's an important piece of the story, because at age 14, this eye doctor says, basically, you got this disease, just give up, throw in the towel, which is insane. And that's why I was saying when I was 14, the great thing was I was a teenager when I got diagnosed, because I didn't really pay attention to this dude. I was like, whatever, I don't listen to adults, I'm not listening to you. And what was interesting was when I got promoted to be the general manager for GE Capital, I was 34 years old. And I was living in Puerto Rico. I had a family of 2. I was doing Ironman triathlons, running marathons, like all this different stuff. And I purposely made an eye appointment with that same eye doctor back in Colorado.
I love it.
And I went back and he tested my eyes, dilated them all. He's like, when he looked in my eyes, like, whoa. He's like, puts his eye hand in front of me. He's like, can you see any movement? Because I guess my retina is pretty wrecked, but I think I see pretty good. I'm like, yeah, I see fine. He's like, how many fingers I got? I was like, you got 2, your hands open, palm towards me, this. And he's like sitting there shaking his head. I was like, yeah, I don't know if you remember me. You diagnosed me when I was a kid. He's like, I don't remember. And he sat back in his chair. I was like, yeah, I wanted to come and kind of get your take on my eyesight. And then I went through what I'd done in life. I was able to make it through school. I got in scholarships. I went to law school. I was doing these Ironman triathlons, not guided, myself. I had some crashes, all different stuff. And the guy just sat back, and he was like months from retirement. I barely caught the guy. And it was I told you so. And I was young then. And I really wanted to go back, with animosity and be like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
But I didn't. I held it together. And after that, we had a really nice conversation. I told him my story. And as I was leaving, he was talking to his receptionist, kind of looking at me, and he was telling her, that guy can barely see. And then he started telling the story like it worked, But and I always tell that story because I always think, I'm like, people are always going to project themselves. And I realized through life, that's what that eye doctor was doing. He was, he treats people with eye diseases and he projects like, God, if I was like that, I'd just give up.
Yep.
And like you said, it's how you respond,
right?
That matters. And that was a pivotal moment in life. So, just in alignment with your theory and your philosophy, it was how that response took place. I didn't give up on my life. I didn't give up on my dream, despite other people telling me to do so. And that's kind of been a common story metaphor throughout life and everything I've done. You get told certain things and you got to decide whether you're going to live their life or whether you're going to live your life.
That's right. Yeah. And we have enough negativity without someone telling you you can't. And if you say you can't, you're exactly right. And I also do inspirational speaking. And that's why, as a matter of fact, that's how I heard about this guy, Jason. I was sitting in my office one day and my wife sent me a message from a friend of hers that had heard about Jason. So I was intrigued immediately and connected with him and stayed in touch a little bit over the last couple of years. So now that I had this going, I was excited to have him because we sound a lot alike. And when you said, when you said something about that doctor, let me tell you my story. Now, this is in the book, but I don't usually tell my story on this platform. So this is going to be new for most people who listen to this. I was married 3.5 months. I had gone to the hospital due to dizzy spells. And they said I've either had a stroke, a pre-stroke, or a warning that a stroke was coming. So they held me for observation. Well, the next morning they take me for an MRI. They pull me out of the machine. That's the last thing I remember. But Sherry, who was my wife at the time, and I'll tell you why in a minute, Jason, you know, but someone here might not. They pulled me out of the machine. They take me back to my room, and I don't remember anything of the such. I just remember coming out of the MRI machine, sitting down or sitting up, and that's it. It's the last thing I remember. Well, Sherry comes into the room just to see how I'm doing. I mean, just a normal visit. We've been married 3.5 months at the time. The doctor sitting on my bed turns around, looks at her and says, "Is there stress in your marriage?" She said, "What? Is there stress in your marriage?" She said, "No, we've been married 3.5 months. I think that's what his problem is. There's stress in your marriage." So we got diagnosed with marital stress disorder. Now, I won't say that hospital name, but Sherry's brother-in-law is a very well-respected heart surgeon in the region. And he brought me to his hospital and got the top doctors on it. They even had the top doctors at this particular hospital collaborate together. What's wrong with him? Why does he have what he has? Long story short, I had 3 major brain diseases, and this guy's diagnosing me with marital stress disorder. Well, I obviously made it through, which I am an absolute miracle. I had 3 brain diseases, no immune system to fight them, none, 0. So I shouldn't even be here right now. I had cerebral histoplasmosis, meningitis, encephalitis at the same time. That's really not a good combination. When your brain's swelling and the lining squeezing it, that's just not good. So that's why I was so far out of my head and talking crazy. And I didn't know marriage could be that bad, but dang, he must have one. Well, years later, my dad ends up in the hospital, and we walk into my dad's hospital room, and it's the doctor. And when he looked at me, I saw enough of his face to realize he was like, "Oh, that guy looks familiar. Okay, I've got to go." He said what he said, and he left, and we never saw him again. Wow. And I'm like, "That's right. I'm still here. I know to your shock, I'm still here. But like you, I wasn't a jerk. What I wish there's a part of me that wishes I would have said, 'Hey, doc, remember me? You know, the guy with marital stress disorder, and I ended up having meningitis, encephalitis, and cerebral histoplasmosis that you missed.' And if it was up to him, I would not be here. Thank God I had a connection at another hospital. But anyway, I said my then wife, because she actually passed away 9 years after that. So, but I am now married again. So anyway, God loves restoration. So anyway, that's my story, but nobody came to listen to me. They always hear me. So let's get back to Jason. So it just made me think.
That's actually, I think that's a great story of, intervention, and that, God's greater than this earth, because it's so funny. We as humans think like we can figure stuff out, right? And there's all these books, there's all these cases, there's all this stuff. Like even when people get diagnosed with cancer, they come back 4 months later, it's gone.
Yep.
And they're like, "This can't be. There's no medical." Well, there is no medical reason. Guess what? There's God. God is greater than this little speck that we're in here. Yep. And that's been, I did not have a strong faith back when all this stuff was happening either. Like my faith really began in 2011, but as I've looked back in my life and connected the dots and seen what's going on, I've seen God, and I've, experienced God working in our lives. So
yeah,
I think it's great. I think it's beautiful.
Well, the thing that you just said, it makes me think of, when cancer disappears, that's not natural. But God doesn't work in the natural. He works in the supernatural. And I think a lot of people miss that because we're so limited in our comprehension of what goes on that, God just so big. It says he cast out Satan with the move of his finger. That's powerful. So we miss the supernatural.
And I mean, nothing's impossible for him. He created the whole universe. I mean, that's pretty impressive as it is. And we don't get to see it all. It's just amazing. But anyway, you get me on that, I get really excited. So let's go back to Jason.
Me too.
Well, that's cool. Well, we'll talk about it all night as far as I'm concerned. But speaking of that, so you went through there, you went to GE, and now I know today you're a pretty popular keynote speaker. And I really want to hear your story about your overcoming your vision by taking a little trip across the country.
Yeah. So what ended up happening was I did that's a big story.
I have no doubt.
I had to take a breath there. So, yeah, I did the lawyer, I did the corporate thing. I worked for a couple of places after GE, and I got to this place, like when I said, I was 44. It was really when I was 44 and I stopped driving, a lot of things happened. And I just left my last job. I was running a nonprofit, and I had gotten divorced and, stopped driving. This eyesight thing catches up to me. And I'd been in denial. Like if the grief process, that 5-stage process, I was stuck in denial for 30 years, but I was finally at the point where denial couldn't work anymore. So there was everything kind of happened, like, bargaining, depression, anger, sadness. There definitely was not acceptance, but it was all the other, 3, and still, trying to deny, but it wasn't working so well. And I ended up in a severe depression, a major depression. And meaning, I had my kids half the time. I couldn't work, wasn't working, just laying in bed, not showering, not eating. It was a disaster. And my mom ended up coming over, and she's like, "You got to go see somebody." I was like, "I know, but I can't even search. I can't find somebody." And she found me a psychologist, and I went there the next day, and he helped me start to do stuff. And actually it's kind of interesting because as soon as I went and saw him, he asked me like 10 questions, probably like the depression checklist, right? And I answered yes to everything. He's like, "You are severely depressed." I mean,
Duh.
like, that's why I got out of bed after like 3 months and took a shower. It came clear over here so I could see you. He's like, "Well, I want you to get on meds." I was like, "You don't even know me. You don't even know my story." I was like, "Yeah, that's how I feel." But I was like, "What else can I do?" Because I've never been, I've never been like a pill cures anything, or like, take a pill and this happens. But sometimes a pill is needed. Like, I do take pill, like I take Advil, that type of thing. But with this situation, I was like, this is bigger. Like, there's no pill, dude. So he said, "Well, if you don't want to try that right now, there's another thing we can try." I was like, "Okay, tell me." He's like, "You can exercise, and you need to do that 4 times a day and get your heart rate up where you're panting, breathing." I was like, "I like to run." I was like, "Does running qualify?" He's like, "Yeah, do that 4 times a day throughout the day, every day." And what that does is it combats the depressive chemicals in your brain. So it will release serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, all kinds of different stuff. There's these 7 chemicals he went through. I can't remember them all. He's like, that will help you. So you're not always in this depressive state. Like, it'll kind of do like a natural chemical thing with what I would try to do with the medication. I was like, "Okay, I'll try it." And that was it. I had ran before, but I was running. Like, I'd run to go see the guy. His office is like 14 miles away. So I'd run there 14 miles, have my appointment, run back 14 miles, like 28-mile round trip. I just running. I wasn't working. I was running. And in the midst of all this, and I'm still pretty wrecked. It's not like immediately like I start running like in the movies and everything's great. I'm functioning, right? I'm able to get out of bed and take a shower and try to eat. Like, that's the level I'm at. So that's a huge improvement from where I was.
Right.
And I had volunteered when I came back from Puerto Rico to Denver 4 years before this all happened. I started volunteering at this homeless shelter in Denver called Christ's Body Ministries. And I liked it so much that I got on the board, and I spent a lot of time there. I helped them financially. I helped them volunteering. I helped however I could. Great organization. And I wasn't doing anything when I was depressed. I was just laying in my bed. And I called up the executive director. I told him, I was like, hey, John, I'm a mess, man. I need to come in, because when I serve other people, it jazzes me up. You know, I get all jacked up. It's good. And so he always presumed I was busy and stuff. He's like, you're busy, Jason. You probably don't have to worry about, we'll get other people. And we got off the phone. I was like, God, I reached out. That's the only thing. And then like 5 minutes later, he calls me back, and he must have heard it in my voice. He's like, Jason, you sound like you need something. I was like, I do. I'm in a real bad place. He's like, come in on Thursdays and you can do the clipboard for laundry and showers. And I said, okay, I don't know what laundries and showers is, but I'll do it. So every Thursday morning I would run over there. It's like 6 miles from my house over there. And I do showers and laundry. And at 10 a.m., a bunch of homeless people lined up before 10 a.m. and the doors opened at 10 a.m. They would come inside to another door where I would be standing with a clipboard, and it's first come, first serve for showers and laundry. So, 2 people could do loads of laundry, and then usually get about 20 people in for showers in the time that we had. And it was my job to, get everybody's name, work the clipboard, make sure they got in, out, and, just that. A really simple job, right? So I'm doing that for like a few weeks, and then, one Thursday, I run in there and I'm doing my thing. And it's like, I stand like in this little tiny hallway, which is in between the galley kitchen. And then on the right-hand side is 2 showers. And behind me is like the washing machine. It's pretty close quarters. So there's a lot of noise, ambient noise, and different stuff going on. And I'm working the clipboard. I'd gotten everybody, I'd gotten the names on the clipboard, just got 2 people in the showers. And I was getting a new towel and a little travel soap, travel conditioner, shampoo. And all of a sudden I'm sitting there, and it's like all of the noise starts to disappear. And I'm kind of sitting there on my clipboard. I'm like, I'm not kind of understanding what's happening at the time, but I just noticed it's like this, it's like you're losing your hearing, it's like going to silence. I'm like, okay. And then I have this thought. Like I say, a thought was shoved into my head, and it was, you will run across America. And I didn't hear a voice, but it was a thought. And like, I wasn't thinking anything, John. I was just noticing, I was like, God, the sound's going away. And all of a sudden it's like, you will run across America. Like that was there, like even now telling you, I'm getting like that adrenaline rush. I'm like, holy shit. And then all of a sudden, and then the sound starts to come back. And I started hearing like, there's volunteers, like within 5 feet of me, right over here in the galley kitchen, they're laughing, making oatmeal. I hear Ursula in the shower. She's my friend. I just put her in the shower. She's singing. And the laundry was imbalanced. So the washing machine was going doom, 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 doom. And I remember I sat there. I was like, what the heck just happened? Like I was freaked out. It was like movies stuff. Yeah. And I'm a lawyer. So I was sitting there like, that can't be real. I was like, that didn't just happen. But, I know it happened. I know what I experienced. And I did not go, I wasn't drinking, not taking drugs. There was nothing, man. I'm like sane, right? And if I heard somebody else tell a story, I'd be like, you look cuckoo, dude. But I knew what happened. And I knew also having the legal background, being the lawyer I am, I was like, if I want to discard that, I can pick that apart in 10,000 different ways, create arguments like that never happened, put it in the back of my mind, never act on it. And at that point, I said, I am going to do what I believe God is telling me to do. And I was like, I have to hold myself accountable. And if I don't, I know I'll do the other. I'll be selfish. I'll live my life my way, or I'm going to be obedient in this moment. I texted my mom and I said, I am going to run across America. And 5 seconds later, she texted back and said, I'm in. That was it, man. And that began an 18-month journey of preparation, training, and everything to get to a point where I started running across America. And I eventually took 18 months. I can tell you like that whole story if you're interested, but 18 months preparation, then took 2 months to run across America. And there's a whole bunch of God story in that. And
so you started where and ended where?
Started in Santa Monica at the end of Santa Monica Pier in Los Angeles. And I ended at New York City Hall.
Yeah. What was it? 59 days, 51 miles a day.
Yep. 59.5 days, 51.5 miles a day. Don't shortchange me my half mile. That's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. 3,000, I believe it was 3,063 miles.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's crazy. You know, but that shows everybody. There are two things that I want to point out from your story. Number one, sitting around and moping and being depressed helped you accomplish exactly what, Jason? Nothing. Getting out, even when it's tough, and doing something kind of revived in you. But the key was you were helping other people, right?
No.
There's something about helping people that kind of lights a fire in you when you put yourself to the side and you think of somebody else.
I've always believed that, you know, Martin Luther King and Mother Teresa have some really great quotes on that. You know, Martin Luther King said, "A life of service is a life of meaning."
Mm-hmm.
And Mother Teresa has some really great quotes there. And, you know, she would always talk about being, you know, some of the leper colonies in India and, you know, serving people who, according to everybody else, are disgusting. And she's like, when I am with these people, I am looking into the eyes of Jesus. And that's kind of, you know, it's the same type of thing. I wish I was as holy as Mother Teresa to be able to do that, but it's the same type of thing, man. You serve. So when you're when you're at your rock bottom, you know, you go serve other people because you've tried to serve yourself, right?
Right.
Unsuccessfully, and for whatever reason. And I tell you, man, I think that's why God put me there. And when I look back and I connect the dots, all these different professional things, I've had different things happen and been removed from different positions and, you know, been angry, confused why they happen. You know what? I am as stubborn as they come. I will not quit. And if God did not intervene and break me down to nothing, I would never have been obedient to his calling.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was the next thing. And I do not, first of all, want to downplay depression. I know it can be a chemical imbalance. I know there are reasons, but the fact is still the fact that getting out and, you know, fighting through it and being a fighter and not a quitter and, you know, just stop your whining, you know, get out and start doing something. And I've not dealt with it, so I can't speak on it, but I just heard my friend Jason talk about it and then start doing something. Did you have any medication that helped you get over that?
I did not end up, and I haven't ended up using
Okay.
it. It's really, you know, I still struggle with depression and I manage it, frankly, with exercise. Exercise has been very good for me. And
That's awesome.
what I always say is, I think there's 4 biological imperatives. And this is, you know, what I teach, which is sleep, eat, hydrate, exercise. And those, if you can get those things done, this is how I deal with it. If I can get those things done, I can keep an even keel, because there are times and different things that happen in life, which, you know, if I'm in a tough place, you know, I know when it's coming, I can feel it coming. And, you know, those are the things I go to. Yep. Sleep, hydrate, eat, exercise. And I will just, you know, focus on that. It's really focusing on what you can do, and you can't downplay depression too, because I have experienced it with other people in many different ways, and medication does help a lot of people. Absolutely. Like it is like night and day. Yep. So everybody's got to find their own path. The other thing is, you know, the other thing that I like to talk about it, because there's been like a stigma about it. And, you know, when I give keynotes, I get up on stage, and you know, I've been on stage in front of hundreds of people, CEO conferences, different stuff like that. And I will have men who will comment when it comes to Q&A time, and they're like, you know, "Thank you, Jason, for speaking about depression, because I struggle with that too." You know, CEOs of companies who are supposed, you know, these men who are not supposed to be feeling or different stuff, you know, and women are more apt and prone to talk about that and how we feel and different types of stuff. But there's this huge undercurrent, and it's real, man. You know, mental health is the same as physical health, and they're interrelated. They interrelate with one another. And you know, we got to take care of ourselves all the way around.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I love that you talked about it, because I mean, I think the main point, so nobody misunderstands me, not downplaying depression. I know it can be a serious thing. The point I was trying to pull out was the fact that you did something about it. You know, you didn't just sit around and lay in bed the whole time. You answered the call to go do something. And when you did, you started to break out of it. Next thing you know, you're running across the United States. And it's a beautiful story. But then you said something else that I thought was awesome. Talked about obedience. Yeah. Talk about that.
So that happened. So I had, that comes back to my faith journey. And my faith journey is, I was born and raised Catholic, and I went through the sacraments, but I really didn't know what I was learning or saying or that type of thing. And I had gotten confirmed, but I didn't even know what I was confirming. And I went off to college, and then I, got into philosophy and spiritualism, Buddhism, like this larger, universe and force. And that was good. I was always good, and I did good for the sake of doing good, but it wasn't, I didn't have that personal relationship with Jesus.
Yeah.
And then on November 12th, 2011 at 3 a.m. outside the house, like within 20 yards where I'm sitting with you right now, I had an experience. Another one of those ones where you're kind of like, if I tell you, you'd be like, yeah, you're cuckoo. But I wrote a book, and it's in the chapter 12, actually. And, I had this experience, like I would call it an encounter. And I cried for 3 days. I invited Jesus into my life. I accepted him as my Lord and Savior, and my life was changed.
Awesome.
And after that, I talk about this shelter, and actually I was volunteering. I also did Friday pancake breakfast. And one Friday, I was there, and I always operate like in threes. Like if something happens in threes, or I encounter a person like 3 times, I'm like, there's something going on here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I had heard about mission trips. God knows how, like I heard about that. And then in church that Sunday before, the pastor said, oh, we have 2 groups going on missionary trips. One going to Estonia, one's going to Mexico. I was like, oh, okay, whatever mission trip is. And I go and volunteer on the next Friday, and at this homeless shelter. And I walk in, I finish my shift, and the lunch shift comes. And this guy who I didn't even know is like, oh, what's your name? I'm like, oh, I'm Jason. He's like, oh, my name's Barry. And he's like, yeah, have you ever been on a mission trip? I've been on 14. You should really go.
Wow.
And I'm like, this all happens like within a week, right? So I'm like, so I go to my church, to the pastor. I'm like, hey, you said this, like I left the homeless shelter, and I drove directly to the church. And I go to the pastor. I'm like, hey, what's this mission trip thing? What is a mission trip? And what are you guys doing? Like, oh, we go down, we have this partner in Oaxaca, Mexico, and they're all filled up, but maybe next year. I was like, no, I'm going. Like, we're leaving in 2 weeks. I was like, okay, I'm going. He's like, we got a fundraise. I was like, no, I'll pay my way. Don't worry about it. I'm going. He's like, we don't have any more hotel rooms. I was like, just tell me what city you're at. I'll book a hotel right by you. I mean, how long? I am going on this trip. Like, I would not be denied. And he's like looking at me like I'm crazy. I was like, I'm dead serious. I was like, this happened 3 times. I'm supposed to be there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
what was this again? What year was this?
Oh God. Well, this was before too. So it had to be like 2012 or 2013.
Okay. So you were still fairly new in your walk.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Go ahead.
Yeah. New.
Yeah.
So, and at this point in time, like I'm running 100 milers, and there's this race in Colorado called the Leadville 100, which is no joke of a race. You run like at 10,000 feet elevation, and it goes up to 12,000, and it's 100 miles, and it's got a DNF rate of like over 50%. And, and I'm the only blind person who's ever done it. And so anyway, I'm training for this thing, and like the mission trip is in July, the race is in August. So July is like this huge buildup month. I got to have my miles up. I got to be pounding it, and so I tell the pastor, I go on the trip, and they're like, okay, we need to get up and pray. And this, I'm like, okay, well, before prayer, I'm gonna go out and I got to run for 2 hours before. He's like, Jason, you can't run for 2 hours, then come pray. And I was like, trust me, Jimmy. I was like, I got this, buddy. I was like, I got this. Don't worry about it. So the whole time I kept thinking, I'm like, I'm in control. I got this. I'm going to do this. I'm doing my running, and like throughout the whole mission trip, I'm kind of getting God smacking me upside the head all the time. Like, just, are you going to listen? So it turns out this one day I take off, and I'm like, God, I got, my run's been getting messed up. But I got a little extra time on this day. I'm going to get like a 4-hour run in. I'm going to leave super early, and I'm going to leave like where we're staying at, and I'm going to turn right and just run out for 2 hours. Then I'm going to turn around and then I'll run directly back for 2 hours and I won't get lost. So I do that, execute my plan, run out for 2 hours. I start coming back and I'm lost. And I'm like, how can I be lost? I did not take a turn. I know it. And I'm like lost in Oaxaca, and my Spanish is not the best down there. It was not any good. And I end up having to put my tail between my legs because I'm way past prayer time. I'm way past breakfast time. The whole mission team is supposed to be in the van going to the place. I haven't even gotten back, showered, eaten, nothing. And I'm lost in Oaxaca. And I call the guy and I'm like, Jimmy, I went running. You know what I did. I'm lost. I need you to come find me. I'm so sorry. I know everybody's trying to go to dig holes to do the work that we're supposed to do for here. And it's my selfishness I'm just like, come get me. So he comes, and that was like the ultimate lesson where I was like, I need to be obedient. Mm-hmm. And this is not about me. This is about surrender, and my life is going to be obedient. And that was it. And that's good. That really, before that, I got to tell you, John, I lived my life. I thought I was living a good life and selfless life. I wasn't. It was selfish. It was all about me, my family, my community, what was within my bubble. Yep. Everywhere else, survival of the fittest. You guys take care of your stuff. You got to have other people. And this, at that point, it turned into like, love your neighbor. Mm. Like, your life is a selfless, you are here to serve, you are here to do whatever. And what I realized when I got to that point was like a life of service. Like, before, I thought I'd been serving, it wasn't even close. And it, a lot of work came upon me, because before I wasn't looking for opportunities to serve, and they're always there. What happens is most of the time you're so involved with your own myopia of your own life, you just wince right by, and you don't see that little kid who has a flat tire, or that person who's crying or looking down, or this person on a bench who needs something to eat, or that friend who is struggling, who needs somebody just to call to check in. There's so many of these opportunities, John, and that began where I'm at today. Mm-hmm. And the Run Across America was just a piece of that story, with, I believe, how God is using me, or has called me. Mm-hmm. for the journey that he's put me on. Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. I teach marriage ministry, and you and I had this conversation a month or two ago, and we have just started Ephesians 5, and I enjoy taking scriptures that aren't necessarily marriage scriptures and applying them to marriage. And I find parallel stories that we can learn from. And I just taught the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, sacrifice and obedience. Wow. And I talked about Cain and Abel, and Cain's sacrifice was just the leftovers, and Abel's sacrifice was the best of everything. His first fruits, the best of his first fruits and all that. Cain gave his leftovers and some of his crops. That's how the Bible words it. And so God confronts Cain. This blows me away. God confronts Cain, and Cain gets upset. How many of us don't do what we're supposed to do? We're held accountable, and then we get mad because we're being held accountable because we didn't do what we were supposed to do. So we went from that story, and we talked about, sacrificing for your spouse. God's not going to put up with you halfway sacrificing for your spouse. He wants you to give your spouse all of you. That's why they were naked in the garden in the beginning, before they realized they were even naked. It was a full give myself to you thing. That's my theory on that verse. So then we go to the next week, and we start talking about sacrifice. And we moved over to the story with Samuel and Saul. Well, Saul was told to go to the Amalekites and wipe everybody out, leave nothing, destroy them all. So Saul gets there, tells the one group of people, you guys were nice to the Israelites on your way out of Egypt. You are so kind. Get out of here before I kill all the Amalekites. He gets to the Amalekites, and Dagon was the king of the Amalekites. He takes the king, takes all the best of the sheep and the cattle and all of that, and then he kills the rest. And he comes back and he's building himself a monument. And he's all bragging like, yeah, look what I did. Not only did I kill them, I got their king and I got their best to sacrifice to God. And Samuel got a word from God. And God said that he was pretty angry at Saul because he did not obey. And that's where the verse comes in. Obedience is better than sacrifice. So it requires both of those characteristics as Christians. Sacrifice, like you're talking about, but obedience. God desires obedience more than sacrifice. So it's funny to me that you just talked about those things, and I just taught on those things in our marriage class. And then, of course, last Monday was technology. Put your flipping cell phone down when people are talking to you.
Be present.
I get fired up about the cell phone thing, man. How much do we spend our lives on a piece of equipment when we've got people right in front of us? Anyway,
I was having that conversation with a friend, even like, with kids. I think that's it's kind of interesting because we thought that, when Jobs invented this smartphone, not just like less than 15 years ago, like, oh, wow, the world's it's the greatest thing ever. And it turns out, well, what ends up happening is the human condition or the evil side or the darkness ends up corrupting whatever it can to do its work, right? And that, I look at that as well. I'm like, human connection is what we desire.
That's right.
And we thought this thing is like a connection or a communication device. And to a certain extent it can, but it also preys on certain aspects of the human condition.
Yep.
And that not the good aspects.
No, it's made to be addictive, literally. Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all of these apps, they are designed to make you addicted. And if you read scripture, it says that we are not unaware of the enemy's schemes.
Well, I think they have evolved. Humans are addicted to money, like it's a false god. Mm-hmm. And like when Facebook was first created, I don't think it was created for that purpose, but it definitely got sold and then it's monetized. Yep. And that's there goes that's the human condition, mm-hmm. corrupting something to, for negative purposes. And the enemy will work through whatever's there that it can. So.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And distraction, the longer he can keep you distracted, the longer he can keep you from growing closer to God. And I that's what I try to get with the cell phone thing. It's not just your Christian walk. Your marriages are being destroyed.
Everything.
Yeah. Your family's being destroyed. Your kids don't even know who you are because you can't talk to them without checking your text messages. You're telling that kid that this phone is more important than you are. Yeah. I get fired up.
I think there's a way to use it as a communication device.
Yeah.
But we really have to be disciplined. And we really got to check ourselves moment by moment. And, because it's temptation. I think that's probably the biggest piece, because I've tried to look at it. There's pros and cons. It's not totally evil. I mean, I'm able to make friends in different parts of the world I'd never keep in touch with.
Right.
Without this thing. So, the negative part of it is really about self-discipline and, checking yourself. And, humans, we are tempted and we are, we're just creatures that do not delay gratification. We're not, the most disciplined things in the world. It just is.
But it's in itself, it's not a bad thing. It's what you do with it.
There you go.
That's it. It's just like music. People have a hard time with, like, there are some that just have a hard time with Christian metal and Christian rock. And they're like, well, that's evil. I'm like, no, God created the music. And you said it probably 10 minutes ago. The enemy enjoys taking things that are good and turning them around. See, God's the creator. The devil's the imitator. If you go back to Moses and Aaron going to Pharaoh, it's one of my favorite stories to make a point. Moses and Aaron go to Pharaoh to let my people go out of Egypt. And to prove that they were sent by God, Aaron takes the cane, or Moses takes the rod and throws it down. It turns into a snake. Well, that's pretty powerful, except Pharaoh brought his magicians in. They did the same thing. They threw theirs on the ground and it turned into a snake. But then this is the best part of the story. The snake that Moses and Aaron had ate the snake of the magicians. I love that. That's, to me, that's actually funny. Yeah, we can do the same thing, but yet our snake just devoured yours. So that shows you, to me, that's a great principle point of where the power is. So God's the creator, devil's the imitator. Because if you notice all these religions out there, do they have a form of Christianity? Yeah, they do. Most of them have a form of Christianity, but they're not Christianity, because the Bible says there's one way to God, and that's it. And you even touched on that. It's Jesus. End of story. He said, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. Nobody gets to the Father except through me. So there you go. There's my, I just took off on you, Jason. Would you like to
your
talk?
evangelical piece?
Well, that's kind of what the show's about too, you know. But yeah, I don't know. I'm sorry. All that over a cell phone comment.
Yeah.
That's it.
There's a lot to it, man.
And I know you're not addicted to yours. I texted you 3 days ago and I still haven't heard back from you.
Yeah. Not into that thing, man. Unplugging.
I don't blame you. As a matter of fact, I don't know if you heard it beep. The only reason mine is so close to me is because I'm diabetic, and my sugar, really? My sugar levels are on here. So as a matter of fact, I'm going to show the group exactly how this works. And I don't know, do you use this type of technology? I know your vision's different than mine. Where the
speech on.
Oh, voiceover? No, actually I have an Apple Watch and I'm trying to learn it through that, because with my phone, I can still use magnification stuff to see what's going on. So I'm still relying on my sight. Gotcha. And with the watch, it is impossible for me. So that's kind of like my little thing I'm using.
Dexcom G6, 4 minutes ago. 226 Pharaoh high glucose alert.
My sugar's flying out of control because it was low before we started. So I drank a cup of coffee and did not take any insulin. So now in about 10 minutes, I'm going to be doing this stuff.
Well, let's finish up in 10 minutes, within 10 minutes. Make sure you're taken care of, John. I don't want you doing that.
It's all right. As long as it's not low, but yeah. The only reason mine's close to me is because of my sugar levels. That's it. Yeah. Otherwise, it probably wouldn't be around me. My wife's like, man, I sent you a text message. I'm like, yeah, it didn't require a response. You know, I don't want to text. I want to talk to you.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah, that's what I always think too. The closer I can get to a person, the better. And actually we, because we're the same age, are a product of, talking on a landline telephone to people, one telephone. And I was always like the kid who was hogging the line at night. Like I could talk to friends for hours.
I would not have picked up on that.
Yeah, totally. Like for hours. Like I'm all about, connection, talking, but I love being around people. And my favorite thing to do right now is like to walk and talk, like to be in motion and talk with a person. Like I can connect better with anybody. And I am like right there. I have like such a great experience with people when I'm in motion with them. And I don't know. Maybe it's age. Who knows?
I think we value relationship. And I'm sorry, folks, whoever's watching this is not relationship. It's just not. That is nothing more than a communication device for short. Hey, I'll be there in a minute, running late, something like that. But to have, people have long, drawn out conversations. Like, pick up the phone. It's faster. Get it over with. And it's just, if people were in their word as much as they're on Facebook, we'd have a lot more ordained ministers in this country. Think about it. They live on it. Right? Well, did you fall asleep?
I'm here, man.
Okay, just checking. And I can't see you.
I'm moving. I'm nodding head, going.
You just, thanks for nodding your head for me. I appreciate that. Everybody else may have seen it, but I did not.
I was doing it for the audience, all of them. My calling, I felt like God called me to run across America, and I always say that. And the calling actually was, to finish the story. So I did all this preparation. I ended up running across it. It ends up being this super fast crossing, like less than 300 people crossed America on foot. My crossing was the 7th fastest at the time, like in history, out of like 107 billion people who went across this earth, like number 7. and the first and only by a blind person. And so I got back, I finished that, I came back to my house, I remember, and like, I didn't get paid. I didn't get some medal. There wasn't, fame or anything like that. And I came back to my house. I was like, okay, God, I did what you said to do. And like, now what? Like, I thought I was going to get to New York and, God would cure my eyesight. And there would be this tremendous, like all the scientists be like, oh my God, you've been cured. You can see now. Like, how does this happen?
Yeah.
No, it actually got worse as a result of the run. I come back to my house and I got here and I'm just like, okay, I'm just waiting for the depression to come again, and then instead of the depression coming, the phone rang, and the ring of the phone was, I got asked by different companies to tell the story. And I'm like, what story? Like, you ran across America, tell us the story. I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. Like, you don't want to hear this crazy, faith story. You're a secular you're secular corporation. You don't want to hear this crazy faith story of me getting called. And then, I go, and what ended up happening was I went and I told the story. I'm like, it really impacted people. I'm like,
yeah,
wow, this really impacted people. So I started working on how to speak, because I'm not a trained speaker. And every day for like 6 months, I taped myself with a GoPro, and I developed a talk, and I'd watch 3 TED Talks. I'd critique myself. And then it came time, like a place actually wanted to pay me to talk. I was like, what? You're going to pay me? Like, and then Amazon called me up and they're like, we're going to fly you to Seattle, our headquarters, and you're going to tell us the story. And I was like, what? What? And that began like a speaking career. And I ended up writing a book, and I didn't write a book to publish to everybody. I wrote a book because my kids would come with me to different speaking engagements. And after I talked and told the story, they'd be like, Dad, I didn't know that part, and I changed up sometimes, and they were learning. And I was like, these kids have to understand and know how I got to this point, because it's pretty incredible with God and how all of this happened. So I sat down, and it took me 9 months, and I wrote, basically it was a journal to my kids telling them my life story. And my plan was to print it off, go to Office Depot, spiral bind it. And I have special boxes for each of the kids. I put a copy in each of their boxes. And when I die, hopefully, they'd read it.
Yeah.
And when I was doing that, my oldest daughter, who's pretty, really intelligent, great writer, reader, all that stuff. And she was helping me like with outline and, putting the thing together. She's like, Dad, you got to publish this. I was like, no way, dude. It's like a journal. That's very private. That's for you guys. She's like, you gotta publish it. So really with her encouragement, that's how it ended up being a book. And I ended up publishing that. And, I've been speaking now for like 5 years, and it happens by word of mouth. And, the speaking actually, I believe that is the calling, John, because if I didn't, I had done stuff before I ran across America. Like, I've been Paralympian, I have world records, different stuff. But the big wow is the run across America. And then to do it like at 2 marathons a day, people don't do that. Like even it's world class. And like, I look at myself in the mirror, like, I ain't world class, dude. I got like skinny old chicken legs, and, I'm like an old dude, can't see. I mean, it's insane what happened. Like, and God enabled that I should have died 20 times on that journey.
Yeah.
I mean, literally. And I felt like when I was out there, I was in the midst of a war between light and dark, good and evil. I mean, I was in it, and it was happening. And I can tell you stories that are just crazy. I mean, my mom thinks I'm crazy. I'm like, that happened. She saw some stuff happen, and she's like, huh? And so anyway, like, I believe the calling is to get up and tell that story. And I can't tell you, like, I get up, I tell the same story. It's like, say, U2 sings Pride in the Name of Love, right? Like, how many times did they sing the song? Like, I get up and I tell my story. It's like, they're singing their song, but every time I got to say that like it's like my first time. I got to relive it. I got to go through it. And when that happens, what I've found is it really impacts people for some reason. And I could be talking to an audience of 100 people, there's 100 different stories that get told because each person, depending on where they're at and what they need to hear, they pick up or grab onto a different piece of that story. And, I mean, it's hard to do it because every time after I tell the story, like I get wrecked because I go through the same thing emotionally, and it's not like it gets any easier to me. But I think it's kind of interesting because as people have gotten up on, they come up and they're like, you're inspiring, or it's an inspiring story. I'm like, I think everybody has an inspiring story. I think what's inspiring is when a person will tell their story, without any layers of the onion, totally raw, authentic, and vulnerable. I think that is inspiring because I think every one of us has an inspiring story. And that actually is a segue. And I am going to give a plug to something I'm doing. And earlier this year in COVID, I started a nonprofit called Inspire Connection. And it was for that reason, because 10% of my speaking is paid, for corporate keynotes. 90% I do pro bono as a give back. So I'll talk to youth organizations. I'll go to jails. I'll go to any place where people are hurting, halfway houses, rehabilitation centers, whatever. But that's my give back. And what I've realized too at the speaking circuit is once you make it out of the free section, you really start getting paid. People stop doing the free gigs. Like they're just like, give me money, and they go after it, and you can get paid. But I don't want that high quality story to leave, that audience. Like it's just not right to me. So anyway, Inspire Connection, what I've done is I've created a nonprofit, and my idea is to go out and get everyday heroes, because I think everybody is a hero, teach them how to tell their story of tragedy, triumph. And it could be, I was homeless when I was a kid. I was beaten. I was molested. I was, raped. I have this disease, whatever it is, because everybody has stuff, but then they grow up and they look all put together, and bring those real life stories to youth. Yeah. And the idea is to normalize tragedy and triumph, because kids, they haven't lived enough life to understand, we go through it and you can make it through it, and it doesn't have to end. And what happens with these kids a lot of times right now is they are isolated and severely. And like you said, I mean, if you go into research, this is an isolating piece. Social media is an isolating piece. Trauma that kids go through, there's a higher levels of trauma, depression, anxiety. It's just, these kids are roughed up. But what I found is when I go into a school or I go into a youth organization, I tell this story, authentic, raw, of going through tragedy and then being able to triumph. And believe me, there's going to be more tragedies ahead. It's not like, you get out and you're like, it's all rosy. But it helps these kids, and it gives them hope for them to go through their journey and to be able to triumph over their tragedies. And it brings them out of isolation and into a state of connection. So that's what this nonprofit's about, Inspire Connection. And I'm bringing, and creating everyday heroes and delivering those stories to youth around the world now. And the great thing is with COVID, I've given talks now in Pakistan, in South Africa, in Europe, in Indonesia. And before COVID, I was trying to convince organizations to let me speak to them via Zoom. I was using Zoom before. Now with COVID, everybody knows it can happen. So that's actually been a really good thing too.
Wow. Well, so as we wind down here, I think it would be fun for you and I to go back and forth, just maybe 2 or 3 stories. I have a chapter in my book called Laughter Does Good Like a Medicine. And it's about me doing stupid stuff because of my vision, or something funny happening because of my vision. So why don't we close out by going back and forth and telling some blind stories, maybe get some people laughing?
You want to go first?
I've never done anything stupid blind.
Let's see. I've done plenty. Let me go back to my college days. I was just in San Diego a few days ago, so this reminds me. I used to be a little bit of a partier, and I didn't tell people about my night blindness, and parties usually at night. So I'd be walking down the street, and in San Diego, the place where we live, there were the old wooden telephone poles. And in San Diego, because of the weather, the humidity, the heat, the wood starts to splinter. I walked straight into a telephone pole. The dude I was with was drunk, so he didn't know. I was like, oh, yeah, don't worry. And it turned out I got a splinter in my nose. I didn't realize. I thought I just hit my nose really hard. So I'm like, oh, like I'm trying to like make sure I don't have a bloody nose, clean up. We get to the party. I'm like, hey, visiting with people. I have huge pieces of wood sticking out of my nose the whole party. I don't even realize. I get back to my room after the party. And my roommates are like, dude, what is going on? And they like pull the splinters out. So anyway, that was a big joke. They're like, dude, we didn't know what you were doing. Like,
that's great.
You had wood in your nose.
Well, I have a couple of that I really enjoy. One, when I first started going to the church where I am, I had to go to the bathroom, and like, high contrast helps me. So what I would typically do is when I go to the bathroom, you've got the dark sign, the lighter letters, and that's the best vision for me because brightness kills my eyes. Like my eyes do not contract at all. So every bit of light that hits goes in.
Yeah.
It's not restricted.
Yeah.
So I get really close to that brown sign on the bathroom, and I can tell if it says men or women just by the length of the word.
Yep.
So I get up there and I'm squinting and I'm like, okay, that says women. Now, remember, I'm brand new into this church.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody even really knows me. And at this time, I did not use a guide cane. So I am walking around and I'm, okay, that says women, don't go in there. So I go down to the next door and I see the sign. I'm like, good, the men. I walk in to the bathroom and I'm like, where's the urinal on the wall? And I'm trying to get my bearings. I'm like, wait, why are there chairs in here? Why are there no urinals on the wall? I did not know that the women's bathroom had 2 doors. So I go to the first, decide not to go in. I go to the second one thinking it's the men. It was the women's bathroom. New guy in the church. There's no telling what somebody would have thought had they caught me in there.
Creeper.
God, exactly. Pervert. I'm blind. I'm sorry. So I got out of there as quickly as I could. And there wasn't a soul in the hallway or the bathroom. I was so thankful for that.
No way, Kai. I got a similar one of those. I was at an airport, DIA, Denver International Airport. I did not see the sign. I thought I was in the men's. I'm like, where are the urinals? But I couldn't wait. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to duck into a stall. I get in the stall. I'm doing my number one. And then I hear women's voices. I'm like, oh, shoot. And I hear the stall next to me close. And then the stall on the other side of me close. And then the ladies are having a conversation. I jump on top of the toilet because I don't want them to see my feet. And I just hide there. And I'm like, I got to wait until I'm using my hearing. I'm like, I got to wait until there's no women's voices so I can get out of here. I was like, I'm in the women's bath. I was like, call the police. So then once it's like quiets down, I get out, wash my hands, and I start going out. And as soon as I leave, there's 2 ladies walking in when I'm walking out, and they give me the dirtiest look. Sure. I'm like, oh, Jesus. And that was before I used the guide cane too. I was like, oh, dude. Yeah.
Well, here's another bathroom one for you. Well, my son played Division II football up in West Virginia. And my dad bought a 9-passenger van. So like all of us could travel together to go watch him play. Well, we were coming back from a game. We stop at a popular restaurant that I will not say on here because they're probably still looking for me. And this is when my late wife was still around. So when we walk into the restaurant, I ask her to take me to the bathroom. We get to the door, I go in, and I see a guy standing, facing the wall using the bathroom. Not a big deal. So I noticed the urinal to the right. So I went to the right and started going to the bathroom. Well, I walked out, we sat down, we ate, we got in the 9-passenger van, and I said, you guys know in the men's bathroom when the urinal's out of order, they put that big plastic bag over it so nobody uses it. They're like, yeah. I said, I wish somebody would have told me. So I'm sitting there going to the bathroom and I'm like, something does not sound right. So not to get graphic, but I had to stop midstream. I put my hand out there and I went, oh no. And the guy was next to me. There's no telling what he thought because I didn't have a guide cane.
Yeah.
So it was pretty embarrassing, but I was again able to escape.
Yeah. There's tons of good stories. There's so many good stories, but you got to be able to laugh at them, man. Like my college roommates, one time I came home, they unscrewed all the light bulbs, rearranged the furniture. I got them back. Trust me, I got them back.
Oh, what did you do?
I got them each one. I can't say on the air.
Okay. Well, I went for a walk in my neighborhood. This is one that it's kind of funny to me, but at the same time, it's one of those, I did it. You know, it's like, wow, because I used to be an excuse maker. Yeah. Now I want to be an excuse breaker. Forget excuses, get it done. Well, I go for it in my house. You go out the front door, you take a left, about 1/10 of a mile is a cul-de-sac. So that's normally where I walk. I will walk down to the cul-de-sac, come back to the driveway, to the cul-de-sac and back. But if you take a right out of my driveway, it's about 1/2 mile to the stop sign. A couple of curves go up the hill. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to the stop sign. If I can go to the cul-de-sac, to the stop sign and back home, that's about 1 mile. So I head toward the stop sign and I'm just chugging along with my cane. I'm thinking, man, it's a lot longer of a walk than it is in the car. Feels like it's taking me forever, but I just kept on going. Well, after a while, I got a little concerned because I'm still walking. And when it gets to the stop sign, if you go across the street, you end up in a yard. And I've not reached that yard yet. Well, I pulled my phone out and I said, driving directions home. And it said I was 1.2 miles away, but I'm only going 1/2 mile to the stop sign. So how am I 1.2 miles away? There is a driveway right before you get to the stop sign that I thought was the road. I got confused. And when I came back out, I thought I was back on the road. I didn't realize it was a driveway. So that literally made me take a left. Then I got down to the next road and somehow took another left. So I'm walking on the road parallel to my street. And I noticed, because the interstate is close to our house, but when I'm walking to the stop sign, interstate's on my left and I can hear the cars.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden they're on my right. I'm like, did I go under an overpass or something? Like, what in the world just happened? I ended up walking over 3 miles that day by myself, but I made it.
Good for you, man.
So I was thrilled to death. I was so excited. But here's one more and this just happened a few days ago. I went back to the stop sign. That's the day that I found out there's a driveway that comes out to it. Because when I walked over 3 miles, it's been 1.5 years ago. Well, just a few days ago, a lady came out of that driveway and told me what was going on. I'm like, well, that makes sense why I got so confused. She said, go right here, just go a couple feet, take a left, it'll take you back down towards your house. So I did. Again, I'm walking. I'm like, there's a cul-de-sac down here. What's taking so long?
Yeah.
I checked my location. Don't ask me how. I only have a theory. I ended up back at the top of the road at the stop sign on that street. I'm like, how did I turn around?
Teleport, yeah.
How did I even turn around? I was just walking. So I think I hit somebody's driveway again and it looped me around. I didn't realize it. So for you people who take a walk, they can see where you're going. Be thankful for the little things.
That's right. Yeah, so, that's an interesting thing, John, that you mentioned, is like the disorientation.
Yes.
Because like we've seen before, we understand what it's like to just, take for granted that you're navigating.
Yep.
And even for me, like where I live, it's like 1 block up, 3 blocks to the left, that's the grocery store. And I know the stop signs, what streets I got to cross, that type of thing. When it gets dark, like if I go out, I take too long at the grocery store, it gets dark and like I don't have my headlamp or even like my cane. Like I'll take my cane out at night and stuff, my headlamp. But let's say I don't have those pieces, or I was like too long in the store, just something happens and it gets dark. I'm like, oh my gosh. Yeah. It's like I could be in the middle of India. I'm like, I know I'm 3 or 4 blocks from my house, but I'm like, I have no clue where I'm at. Like, and I have not gone through formal orientation and mobility training. I'm actually lined up to do that here within the next couple months. Mm-hmm. But that's it's so interesting, like how that exists, Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting thing. But you know, like we've been talking about, man, you got to laugh at life. If you can't laugh at life and you don't treat that, you know, take your medicine and laugh a little. So I like what you said. I'm going to use that if that's okay.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. As a matter of fact, that the beginning of that chapter, laughter does good like a medicine. I said, so how, because I had just told the story about the brain diseases, how the hospital treated me and all the miracles that it took just for me to make it. And the fact that I'm even moving my hands on my own and I don't have brain damage, at least I don't think. And then I told that whole story and I said, so how do you handle a drastic life change such as this? I said, it's simple. You laugh at it because here's the deal. I can get out of bed every single morning, throw my butt on the floor, kick, scream, whine, moan, groan, ask God, why? Get up and I'm still legally blind. So what's the point? I'm only making me miserable and everybody around me miserable.
Yeah,
So
stop your whining, John.
That's exactly right. Stop your whining. So I get up. I thank God that I have the vision that I do, that I can do the things that I do, and I can still operate and then even use it to motivate or challenge people who have a whining problem. So you could, you know, it's your choice. I get to get up and be in a great mood and be thankful and blessed, or I can moan. Your choice. Whether you,
everybody has their struggle. We're dealing with blindness and other stuff.
That's right.
Everybody's dealing with something.
Well, my new book that it's going to come out later this year or early next year. It's about mine and my wife's story, but there's going to be a couple of chapters in there that kind of touches base on what you just said in a different type of way. So we all have our struggles. We all have hidden things that nobody sees. You know, for us, they see us with the cane and they see us maybe bumping into a wall or something. But, you know, there are things that people don't see, like you said, rape, you know, abuse, whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And people react to that, but we don't see it because most people just see the regular person. We have the cane. Our handicap is visible. Not everybody's handicap is visible.
It's even just stuff that's going on. You know, like I always tell the story when I speak. Now when I run at races, I wear a bib that says blind because a lot of times people think that I can see, but you know, I go off course. I'm like, dude, if I take that trail and you see me going in the corner, yell at me, right? You know, and they're, you know, if I'm wearing blind, they're like, hey, dude, you know, missed the turn. I was like, sweet, thanks. You know, and I always tell a story. I'm like, yeah, I'm out here wearing this big yellow vest with big black letters that says blind, but you know, another person's not out there wearing their bib that says dyslexia, you know, cancer survivor, you know, battling depression or, you know, whatever. Everybody has a struggle. We've all been through it. John, we don't get to this age without going through stuff and overcoming stuff. And that's the other thing too. Like, I'm glad there's people out there like you that are doing the work you're doing, you know, putting out books, keep continuing to talk to people, doing this, you know, this show, because it's really about reminding people you have the ability to overcome. And guess what? You've been doing it your whole life. You're here right now. That means that you've overcome a bunch of stuff. You just haven't given yourself credit and you're focused on, you know, you're focused on the challenge instead of reminding yourself, dude, I know how to do this. Got it like the back of my hand. Been doing this my whole life. I'm good.
Yeah.
Just reminding them.
Yep. You know, and my catchphrase when I do my speaking engagements, I will talk about the things that I do, not to brag on John. I love bragging on God because without him, we can't.
Yep.
But with him, we can. And so when I go through the list of stuff that I do, you know, the book and, you know, the show, all this stuff, I say, and you could say the same thing. If a legally blind guy can do all of this, what is your excuse? And usually when I get to that point, I will hear oh, like the last time I spoke, I flew out to North Carolina and there was a guy on my left side that did that exact reaction. He just went, oh, and I love that because people don't think like that because they're not in the situation to where they're limited. So, the speaking engagement thing made me think of one more great story I have to tell. Jason, you're going to love this one. This is one of my favorites.
Let's hear it.
This is one of my favorites. So I'm at this church, speaking at this church. They have a hardwood floor for the sanctuary area. And then I'm up on the carpeted stage. Now my wife is sitting over to my left and she wears high heels You know, she's 5 feet tall. I call her my 5-foot monster. She's 5 feet tall. She wears heels. And when she goes with me to places like that to do an engagement or whatever. Well, I'm up there with my bottled water, and I'm just kind of fiddling with it as I talk, because I took a quick drink. I dropped the cap, and it, goes bouncing across the carpet. Of course, I'm not going to see it. So I hear click, 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 click from my left. And I said, I looked at her and I said, I shook my head, no, like, don't worry about it. Well, then I see a silhouette right in front of me, because that's all I could see was a silhouette. I thought, she's going to do what she does, taking care of me, making sure that I get my bottle cap back. I reached down, grabbed the bottle cap, and I said, thanks, babe. And then the silhouette went that way, the opposite direction. And I stopped. I went, in my mind, I'm like, that was not my wife. And so out loud in the church, I said, I knew as soon as I said it, that was not my wife. And that church erupted in laughter. It was, and they told me after the service, they said, you could not have picked a better person to do that to, because he turned every shade of red there was. Because I called some dude babe, thinking it was my wife. I mean, those types of things. Why can't you laugh at that? That's just funny. So enjoy life with what you've been blessed with. Just enjoy your life. Oh yeah, that's what
I love it, John. I can go on forever, man. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I really appreciate it, buddy.
You got it, man. Well.